Look closely at that empty seat on the Team USA bench. Notice who isn't there. The head coach is missing, and that's the detail most mainstream outlets won't even mention. They want you focused on the gold medal, the 84-70 win over Spain, and nothing more. Just smile, clap, and move on. But if you really understand the game and the business behind it, you know how to read between the lines. And what just happened might be one of the most telling moments we've seen in a long time. Welcome back to WNBA Pro. Lock in, eliminate distractions, and give this your full attention, because what we're about to break down could completely change how you view this entire situation. What if the absence of the head coach wasn't random? What if it revealed something deeper, something about internal pressure, locker room dynamics, and decisions that were bigger than basketball? The reality is, leadership choices matter most in high-stakes moments. And when those moments arrive, every decision, who plays, where they play, and how they're used, tells a story. In this game, that story raised serious questions. Instead of fully unleashing Caitlin Clark, arguably one of the most dynamic offensive players on the floor, Team USA went in a different direction. She spent stretches off the court, and when she did play, she wasn't always in her natural role. At times, she was pushed into positions that didn't maximize her strengths. Instead of running the offense, creating tempo, and controlling the game, she was asked to adapt in ways that limited her usual impact. And the result? The offense looked different. Without its primary playmaker dictating pace, things slowed down. Ball movement stalled. Possessions became predictable. Spain's defense settled in and forced Team USA into tougher situations. Meanwhile, Chelsea Gray was given extended minutes to manage the offense. She finished with 8 points, 4 assists, and 4 turnovers, a 1-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. Now, in high-level basketball, that number matters. When assists and turnovers are equal, it usually signals inefficiency. It means possessions are being lost just as often as they're being created. And at this level, that's costly. But here's what makes this situation so interesting. Despite all of that, despite the role changes and limited control of the offense, Caitlin Clark still found ways to impact the game. When the structured offense struggled, she adjusted. She created opportunities in transition, pushed the pace when she could, and made plays that shifted momentum. Because that's what elite players do. They adapt. And that's why this game isn't just about the final score. It's about decisions, roles, and what happens when a team doesn't fully lean into its most effective strengths.
They were showing so many highlights on their socials, and I think that it was a very good decision because honestly, she may not have scored the highest points in every game, but her impact on the game and the tempo that she creates in every game and the excitement that she creates in every game is undeniable.
Now focus on this sequence, because it tells you everything about elite processing at the highest level. Caitlin Clark secures the ball on defense, and instantly, before most players would even take a dribble, she's already reading the entire floor. In a split second, her eyes shift up court. No hesitation, no wasted motion, just recognition and reaction. She delivers a perfectly timed, full-court pass, right into the shooting pocket of Paige Buchers.
Clean, direct, precise.
What started as a messy, contested defensive possession turns into an easy transition opportunity in seconds. And that's the difference. This isn't just a flashy highlight for social media. This is control. This is vision. This is the kind of play that forces defenses to rethink everything. Because now, it's not just about stopping the ball in the half court. It's about being ready, at all times, for something happening instantly, from anywhere on the floor. Plays like this don't just create points. They create pressure. They force defenders to constantly look over their shoulders, unsure of where the next threat is coming from. They disrupt structure. They break rhythm. They create doubt. And that's what makes it so important. Because even in a system where she wasn't the primary focus, even when she wasn't consistently given control of the offense, Caitlin Clark still dictated the tempo in key moments. She didn't need a perfect setup. She didn't need a design play. She just needed the ball. And when she had it, she didn't just create opportunities. She changed the entire geometry of the game. Not only with passing, but with range. Because when defenders know she can pull up from deep, far beyond the standard line, It stretches the defense in ways that are almost impossible to contain. Suddenly, spacing opens up. Lanes appear. Rotations break down. So this sequence isn't just about one pass. It's about what it represents. It shows that no matter the role, no matter the system, her impact doesn't disappear. It adapts. And when it does, it becomes even harder to stop.
This was one for the highlight reels, folks. Caitlin with her QB1 touchdown pass over to Paige for the bucket.
Her against Dioso, and that one is good.
Cross court. And I don't know how Paige found Caitlin to pass the ball to when she was in trouble here, but Caitlin gets it over to...
Now look at the sheer audacity of that shot. All the narratives suggested that Caitlin Clark wouldn't be able to score efficiently against European competition. There were claims that the FIBA three-point line would limit her range and expose weaknesses in her game. But what happened next completely flipped that narrative. She pulled up from well beyond the arc, deep logo range, and knocked down a heavily contested three. Not just a highlight, but a moment that forced the entire defense to rethink everything. Because it wasn't just about scoring. That shot stretched the defense to its breaking point. It forced defenders to step out farther than they were comfortable, disrupted their spacing, and broke down their rotations. Suddenly, the structure of the defense collapsed, creating open lanes and easier opportunities for everyone else on the floor. That's the real impact. She wasn't just putting points on the board, she was reshaping the geometry of the game itself. Every efficient possession started to trace back to her presence, her range, and her decision-making. And in that moment, all the external noise, the coaching choices, the rotations, the narratives, faded into the background. Because performance speaks louder than anything else. And on that stage, against that level of competition, the message was clear. Her impact translates anywhere under any conditions.
Be one of Caitlin's deepest threes for the tournament, where she shot from, I don't know, Tennessee.
Up to Caitlin Clark. Clark from deep.
And that, to me, even though there wasn't a logo there, that definitely looked like a logo three. And for the people who...
I need this reality to really sink in because it changes the entire conversation. FIBA operates in a completely different environment. It's an international body that isn't influenced by locker room politics, media pressure, or internal hierarchies. They don't care about tenure. They don't care about reputations. And they're not interested in protecting egos. They care about one thing: performance, real production, measurable impact, what actually happens on the court. So when the International Voting Committee evaluated the data, they didn't rely on narratives or inflated box scores. They focused strictly on efficiency, decision-making, and overall influence on the game. And the outcome was decisive. Caitlin Clark was named the most valuable player of the entire World Cup qualifying tournament. Not because of hype, not because of popularity, but because of results. That decision sent a clear message across the global basketball landscape. Because when you remove bias and focus purely on performance, the impact becomes impossible to ignore. On the coaching side, it also created a difficult reality to confront. Lawson wasn't part of that final stretch, and from a distance, she watched as the player whose role had been limited stepped onto the biggest stage and delivered. That contrast speaks for itself. Because when outcomes look like that, questions naturally follow about decisions, rotations, and overall strategy. And those questions don't stay on the court. They carry over into the bigger picture. Because while the MVP announcement was making waves globally, something just as significant was unfolding off the floor. In New York City, major discussions around the league's future were taking place, particularly around the new collective bargaining agreement. And suddenly, everything became connected. Performance, recognition, market value, business decisions.
Is done playing, but now hopefully this CBA thing gets signed, because I want more basketball. I think they're going on like 100 hours of every single day, not a day off, between Kathy Engelbert, the Players Association, some of the players, of just like talking through this. I believe
Now I need you to fully understand the magnitude of this moment, because this timeline changes everything. The WNBA Players Association entered high-stakes negotiations with ownership, pushing aggressively for a significantly larger share of league revenue. The demands were bold, the pressure was real, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. But there was one critical issue that couldn't be ignored: leverage. Because in any negotiation at this level, leverage decides everything. And every executive, every sponsor, and every broadcast partner at that table already understood one key reality. They knew exactly what was driving the league's recent growth. They had seen the numbers. They had studied the ratings. They knew which games were capturing attention and which ones weren't. The contrast was impossible to ignore. On one side, alternative formats and veteran-led projects struggling to maintain viewership. On the other, consistent spikes in engagement, even in low-stakes games, whenever Caitlin Clark was on the floor. That's not speculation. That's data. And once that data became clear, the entire conversation shifted. Because now, the league's financial momentum wasn't just a projection. It was measurable, visible, and directly connected to on-court impact. Ticket sales increased. Broadcast deals expanded. Merchandise demand surged. Everything started moving in the same direction. So when expectations rose and pressure intensified, the spotlight became even brighter, especially during international competition under FIBA. Every possession mattered. Every decision was evaluated. And every role was closely watched, not just by fans, but by stakeholders across the entire basketball ecosystem. And what people saw was revealing. They saw moments where the offense slowed down. They saw adjustments in roles and rotations. And they also saw flashes of elite playmaking that completely changed the pace of the game. Even in limited or unconventional roles, Caitlin Clark continued to influence spacing, tempo, and efficiency. That's what stood out the most. Because true impact doesn't disappear, it adapts. By the time the tournament concluded, several things were clear. The MVP had been decided. The CBA discussions were advancing. And the league itself was entering a major transition phase. Expansion, free agency, a new season approaching fast. And with that comes a reset, because when the next season tips off, the context will be completely different. New expectations, new pressure, new opportunities. When Caitlin Clark steps onto the floor with the Indiana Fever, it won't just be about individual performance anymore. It will be about the full picture: team success, league growth, market impact, and the evolving business of the sport. Because at the end of the day, markets respond to results. Fans respond to what they see. Sponsors respond to engagement. And the game itself rewards efficiency, decision-making, and execution. The conversation is no longer about potential. It's about proof. And as this next chapter begins, all eyes will be on how that impact translates over a full season. Because this isn't just another year. This is a turning point